Hey friends, tonight, we're time traveling back to the Middle Ages, where peasant weddings were an absolute riot. Solemn vows, wandering cows and pigs, tipsy uncles, and sometimes even a good old brawl for extra flair. You could honestly call it the wildest country bash ever. Before you snuggle into your cozy blankets, hit like if you're into those quirky historical tales. And don't forget to subscribe, but only if my storytelling vibes with you. In the comments, let me know where you're tuning in from. Is it Miami, Chicago, or some tiny corner of Nebraska? Oh, and by the way, what time is it where you are right now? It's so cool to see who's joining our global adventure. Now, dim the lights, switch on a gentle fan for that soothing hum, and let's dive into tonight's story. There were no invitations, no rolled parchment, no grand wax seals, and certainly no noble pigeons trained to drop letters down the village well. In the medieval village of Mucklebury, when someone was about to marry, word didn't come through any official channel. It came by whispers. On a morning as peaceful as any other, with mist still clinging to the rotten wooden fences, Mrs. Margitha, village gossip and most trusted source of news within 5 miles, sat beside the well. And then it started. A whisper, light as the breeze ruffling the turnips. Did you hear? Emma's marrying John. John, the cowherd. That was all it took to set off a chain reaction. Mrs. Marge lifted her head as if she'd uncovered a coup in the cabbage patch. Less than 5 minutes later, the whole village buzzed like a beehive under attack. The blacksmith, mid-swing of his hammer, froze and nearly smashed his own thumb when he heard the bombshell. He nodded sagely, pretending he'd known all along but secretly basked in being the first to learn of such a fresh secret. The egg vendor at the market corner decided to hike his prices next week after all. A wedding would require mountains of cakes, and cakes needed eggs. The goose herder feigned disdain, but then gleefully told his flock, "John's marrying Emma," as though the geese were an impartial tribunal. By nightfall, even the hens seemed in on it, clucking as though deciding whether to don red or white plumage for the ceremony. The village dogs barked out of turn, and the old tomcat, who usually cared for little beyond his own naps, fixed everyone with a glare as if he'd known this news all along. And, as tradition demanded, the parish priest was the very last to find out. Father Bernard, a kindly but slow-witted man, was busy shooing the village's herd of goats out of the churchyard. They kept returning not for spiritual reasons, but because Father Bernard had planted mint there. When Father Bernard finally made it to the village square, laden with a basket of vegetables and wearing his usual befuddled expression, everyone had nearly planned the entire wedding party. "Father, have you heard? Emma and John, they're marrying. Next week." An elderly woman practically shouted, as if proclaiming victory in a 3-month siege. Father Bernard blinked. "Which Emma?" he asked, and for a moment the village fell silent. Then everyone spoke at once, a chaotic chorus of rumors that grew more far-fetched the more they were repeated. Of course, in Mucklebury, there was no such thing as no invite, no show. If you were alive, had enough teeth to chew porridge, and could stumble to the square without a map, you'd show up, not out of friendship with the couple, but because a wedding was one of the few occasions when you could eat for free, get drunk without paying a tax, and quite likely witness an outright brawl between 2 meddling old aunts. The bride and groom don't have a guest list. They have no control over how many people will show up. It could be 10. It could be the entire western half of the neighboring village. And if you ask, how do they manage to prepare in time? The answer is, they don't. They just pray it won't rain and that the cakes won't burn. People come hoping to snag a helping of stew, and If they're lucky, a fresh bit of gossip. Farmers arrive because they've heard they can trade 2 turnips for a lucky kiss from the bridesmaid. Hunters show up in hopes of catching an open bar. A few wander in because they misheard and thought it was a wrestling match and don't want to miss out. Then there are those who don't come. Maybe they've died. Maybe they're drunk. Maybe they're debating philosophy with the pigs in the sty. And a handful simply forget. Since there's no posted schedule, no clock, only the sun's position, and a vague sense that it probably isn't time yet. Time here is as fluid as morning porridge. Noon can be any moment between breakfast and supper, depending on how high the sun sits when you've finished milking the cow. That's how it goes. No formal invitation, no RSVP required. In Muckleberry, a single whisper can start a wedding. A lone goat in the cabbage patch can delay it. And if you arrive late, no problem as long as you bring a gift. Turnips are always welcome. You might think a wedding needs a guest list. Black ink invitations on white parchment embroidered with gold thread, or at least a cloaked crow circling overhead to drop scrolls onto rooftops. Oh no. In the village of Mucklebury, the concept of invited guests is extraordinarily inclusive. If you're alive, breathing, and not locked in the mill for arguing with the village chief, you're officially invited. Whether you know the couple or not, whether you've mistaken the wedding for the spring fair, or whether you just wandered by hoping to snag a piece of cake, you still count as part of the celebration. Here, a wedding isn't a private affair. It's a community event where every soul who can walk has a shot at joining in. There's no reception desk, no RSVP list, and certainly nobody asking, "Which table are you at?" Because the truth is, none of the tables are numbered, and most dining boards are simply borrowed planks from the carpenter's shed. The bride and groom never try to control attendance. Simply put, they can't. Guests might range from 10 close family members to the entire population within 3 miles, plus a few wandering monks and a musician of mysterious origin. One ceremony even logged more than 70 attendees, 4 of whom actually knew the bride's name. And if you assume every wedding has servers bringing dishes to your table, you'll be slightly disappointed. In Muckleberry, wedding guests are like miners. They must dig for their own portions among the stews, turnip trays, and beer barrels as big as washtubs. If you're lucky, you'll snag an untouched piece of meat. If not, you'll still have hard bread and heartfelt blessings for free. Wedding gifts are an adventure in themselves. There's no registry, no gift list, no neatly sealed envelopes. Folks bring whatever's at hand to duck, sometimes still waddling, sometimes less lively, a sack of barley seeds, a pair of charming old boots, or sometimes nothing but a long, damp hug. Some even re-gift exactly what they received at their own wedding 3 years ago. That occasion, a wooden spoon with a chipped edge. Of course, not everyone makes it on time. There are the invisible guests, not on any list, if such a thing even exists, never named, but everyone knows they should have shown up. Take Giles, the elderly farmer on the village outskirts, so absorbed in plowing that he lost track of the day, the hour, the wedding itself, and the promise to bring apple cider. When he finally dragged himself back to town, the cakes were gone, the guests had departed, and the gatekeeping dog had eaten half the bridesmaid's skirt. Then there's Hank, nicknamed Drunk Since Birth. Hank has a habit of nodding off in the oddest places inside the cow stall, atop the smithy's roof, once even in a vat of pickled cabbage. That day, Hank awoke mid-ceremony, wild-haired, marched straight into the nave, really just the blacksmith's backyard, and shouted, "I object. Emma must marry the herring." Nobody understood, but everyone applauded. Some even swore it was a brilliant performance. And let's not forget the guests who come solely to eat. They don't offer blessings, or sing, or dance. They descend upon the feast as if they'd trekked 3 days from the northern hills, though they actually live just 3 houses away. Once they've filled their bellies, they slip away quietly, leaving behind piles of bones and a few borrowed dishes. In contrast, there are those who weren't invited at all yet become the soul of the celebration. Take old Bartholomew, who plays his 3-stringed lyre in the village square. Every time, he sits in the middle and repeats a nomadic tune nobody understands lyrically, yet its melody hushes even the clucking chickens. They say that's real talent. Then there are the ones who miss the wedding simply because time in Mucklebury is a loose concept. Here, afternoon can mean any time between high sun and a slight tilt. When someone declares, "The feast starts at 3, you might arrive at dusk or the next morning depending on whether you saw the sun at all. There's no chime, no printed schedule. Everything runs on hunches, habits, and Mrs. Marge's whispered announcements. If you hear, "They're married," you've probably missed the cake cutting, but you can still catch the beer. And nobody minds. In this village, as long as you show up late, drunk or clutching a stray chicken, you're part of the big day. And if you don't come, don't worry. Someone will fill you in on every detail with accuracy ranging somewhere between 30 and 40%. But really, who needs the whole truth when there's bread, cider, and a dancing cat? Have you ever shown up late to a party because of traffic? Or because your alarm never rang? In medieval Mucklebury, there's no need for excuses being. Late is a way of life. There are no wristwatches, no church bells to mark the hours. And if anyone had the nerve to schedule an event at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they'd be looked at as if they'd just proposed marriage to a goose. Time in Mucklebury is elastic. It isn't like a flowing river, but more like a puddle strewn with pebblestone. Person hops across at 10 o'clock. Another wades in by noon, and someone else still stands at the edge debating whether to take off their shoes. When someone says midday, the listener tilts their head, peers at the sky, then nods. Right about midday, maybe just past, who can say? Without clocks, the villagers rely on nature to tell time. It might sound romantic until you realize the sun isn't in the habit of freezing itself for anyone's convenience. They gauge the hour by the shadow of the old elm in the village square, eyeballing its tilt, comparing it to the length they recall from Margaret's wedding last year, and conclude they'll just make time for soup before the ceremony. In reality, nobody is sure, because when the sun is above the elm, often coincides with Henry the cow stepping into half the shadow, leading everyone to think it's still early morning. The result? Some guests arrive after the ceremony's over, the ale's gone, and the bridesmaid is snoring by the stable reason unknown. One man missed an entire wedding simply because he was milking cows. He glanced at the sky, saw the sun hadn't yet topped the pear tree, and figured he still had time. But by the time he finished, changed into fresh clothes, and trudged through the woods, it was all over. Groom shoes off, bride's bouquet stashed away, and half the wedding cake mysteriously eaten. Then there are those overly devoted to their own internal clocks. Take old Thomas, who proudly claims he feels time with his knees. He insists, "When my knees ache, it's late afternoon." The problem is, his knees ache whenever it's damp, whenever he's eaten salted fish, or simply whenever. So he arrives at weddings while everyone's clearing out, yet remains adamant, "I was right on time." The wedding itself was early. No one really argues. In Mucklebury, on time is relative. You arrive when you arrive. If someone asks why you're late, you can say you were waiting for the sun to move far enough, or that you haven't seen the birds come home yet. Any answer sounds plausible as long as you deliver it with absolute conviction. And what about scheduling the wedding for a specific hour? The bride and groom don't fuss over that either. They know everyone will arrive at some point. Weddings typically kick off when folks deign to show up. If an hour passes and only 3 people have arrived, including a toddler nibbling cake, they'll wait. If 10 guests, 2 geese, and old Marge shouting, "Let's begin," turn up, the ceremony proceeds and light be damned. And don't forget those flexible time events. There was once a wedding slated for immediately after lunch. The only snag was nobody could agree on when lunch even was. Some dined at 10 o'clock. Others waited for the rooster's third crow. The outcome? The ceremony started while one group was slurping soup, another group was napping, and the last crew was still at home, arguing over whether to wear long cloaks. With all that ambiguity, you might imagine weddings here would be chaotic. In truth, it's that very lack of precision that makes things effortless. No one rushes, no one hollers, "Why hasn't it started?" There's no countdown clock, no announcements from an MC, no running order, only the hum of conversation, the whinny of horses, the crackle of breaking bread and, occasionally, the soft snore of a guest dozing under a tree. In Mucklebury, people live by the moment, not the minute. They don't set appointments. They place their faith in the natural flow. If you arrive early, you help the cooks chop firewood. If you're late, you join the dishwashing crew. And if you manage to arrive precisely on time, congratulations, you're a rarity. But don't get too proud, for you may have just walked in mid-bridesmaid speech and caught her in tears because nobody understood a word she said. So if anyone asks, "When's the wedding?" the best answer can only be, whenever folks decide to show up. And the sun? It's merely a vague guide like the village cat, who seems to know everything but refuses to share. Dearest viewers, please take a breather or grab a drink before diving into the rest of the story the plot's about to twist. Comment 1 if you're still here and enjoying the tale. When you think wedding, you likely picture a pristine white gown, a misty veil, and gleaming high heels. But that's the modern world, where people have event budgets. In medieval Mucklebury Village, wedding fashion was simple. Wear anything that isn't outright nudity, though that, too, could be flexible depending on the weather and how dense the nearby brambles were. Brides didn't don white gowns. Here, white was the quickest way to invite tragedy. You must understand, white stains with mud, dried blood from the butchered chicken last night, and curious pigs that decide your hem looks like dessert. Instead, wedding dresses were simply the best dress in the bride's wardrobia, highly relative accolade. It might be deep brown, ash gray, or moss green faded halfway by the sun. Sometimes, to add a touch of pageantry, the bride would pin on a length of ribbon once used to tie back curtains. One Agatha even wore a tattered red silk sash, reportedly liberated from the apothecary's drapes after his cat knocked over a vial, sparking chaos. Agatha called it the symbol of new life. Most others believed she was simply too poor to buy proper ribbon but clever enough to disguise it. A wildflower crown was a common accessory. Brides often wove their own that very morning, or had someone with less clumsy hands help. Sprigs were chosen by season. Spring meant wild blooms. Summer meant mugwort, to ward off mosquitoes and evil spirits. And winter, well, sometimes just a few dry twigs adorned with pheasant feathers. One bride even used an entire baby cabbage head, claiming it looked round and full of hope. Grooms, for their part, sported neither tuxedos nor bow ties, and certainly no patent leather shoes. If he managed to wash the tunic he wore well, that was a feat worthy of praise. If his hair lay flat, meaning he'd slicked it with damp fingers, free of sépèvre, was duly impressed. Having hair to slick was privilege enough, especially for a man in his 30s who spent his days wielding a hoe. Shoes? Sorry, but footwear was a luxury. Most folks went barefoot, even at weddings. Not out of love for nature, but because real leather cost more than a farmer's yearly earnings. And sometimes, the chill of mud beneath one's feet gave everyone something memorable to share. One couple confessed, "We can't recall the vows, but we both screamed when we stepped on a nail in the barnyard." Love, you see, is sharing pain. Jewelry was equally inventive. A lone leftover tooth, jutting proudly, could pass for a facial charm. An unbroken belt made quite the statement. A flashy buckle actually, a polished pebble-turned heads. One groom even wore a rope belt and declared it a bond of destiny. In truth, he'd lost his belt while vaulting a fence to escape a pig chase. Body odor? A topic never dared spoken. Everyone had it. In a place where bathing was a quarterly affair, no one complained about another's scent. At weddings, the crowd's combined aromas became a festival of sweat, dried hay, and fry oil from breakfast. As one old crone put it, "I couldn't smell the bride among them that's proof she's well loved, or that the groom smelled stronger than us all." They also didn't bother hiding their stains. A smear of porridge on your sleeve proved you'd eaten before arriving. A patch of dried mud on the bride's skirt, maybe from the foot washing by the stream. In fact, if you showed up spotless, everyone would be suspicious. Perhaps you'd just come from another village, or worse, you were an official. Best of all, no one felt ashamed, because everyone understood a wedding isn't a fashion show. It's a ceremony of union, arranged with the heart and whatever's left in your closet. What you wear matters less than your presence. And if you have nothing decent to don, just wrap yourself in a wool blanket, tuck a wildflower behind your ear, and smile as though it's the latest capital city trend. In short, wedding fashion in Mucklebury is a flexible concept. Not everyone owns silk or brocade, but everyone carries a story, and sometimes a pair of worn-out sandals is all it takes for people to remember you through the harvest season. The wedding venue for many modern folks, it's a matter of life and death. A Gothic cathedral, a timeless castle, a garden with harps chiming in the breeze? Oh no, no, no. In medieval Mucklebury Village, choosing a spot for the ceremony had one rule, and one rule only: no pigs. As long as you didn't hear an oink behind you while exchanging vows, any patch of ground could become sacred. No need for floral arches, no need for rose-petal aisles. Just find a clearing big enough for a few dozen people to squeeze in. A hay cart could double as a ceremonial platform, and, if you're lucky, a tree large enough to cast some shade. That's a proper Mucklebury wedding hall. You might see the bride and groom standing next to the village graveyard, right by some great-grandpa's tombstone no one can name. Not because they're fond of gloom, but because that spot's flat, low on mud, and crucially, already grazed clean by goats. Plus, If you're pledging eternal love with a gravestone behind you that reads, "Here lies Horace, who fell asleep in the pottery kiln," you'll feel pretty fortunate by comparison. If the graveyard's booked entirely possible during peak wedding season, June, post-wheat harvest, the backup is under the old oak tree at the forest's edge. That tree's a holy sight, because it never sheds all its leaves. No one's ever climbed it without skinning their knees, and it's tall enough to shield at least 2 people from sudden sun or rain. Once, a downpour hit mid-ceremony, forcing everyone to huddle under the oak, where the groom stood wedged between 2 cows chewing their cud. The ceremony floor? Picture a lumpy stretch of earth, freshly trampled by 10 kids playing tag, plus the claw marks of one very grumpy hen. If it's just rained, you're wading through ankle-deep mud or deeper if you step in a camouflaged cowpat. The bride moves through the sludge like a tightrope walker. The groom tries to keep a straight face while flicking leeches off his trousers. The ceremonial platform isn't a stage draped in white lace. It's a borrowed hay cart from the neighbor's stable, normally used to haul straw, cart turnips, or ferry a cat to the vet. Today, it's where the priest stands, raising hands to bless the couple, while occasionally dodging a wheel that's slowly coming loose. Chairs for guests? Dream on. No one gets a ticket, and no one gets a seat. Early arrivals claim the prime spots, a log without splinters or a rock not crawling with ants. Latecomers either stand, squat, or lean against a rickety wooden fence that creaks like it's spilling village secrets from the past century. Benches, if they exist, are instantly claimed by the most powerful figures, the elderly. They arrive early, sit down, and have no intention of moving, not even when the wedding's over and someone wants the bench for a dining table. One legendary granny famously stayed put through 3 consecutive weddings because, "Once I'm seated, who's going to make me move?" The tree canopy blocks the sun, but not the buzz of flies. Where there are people, there's sweat. Where there's sweat, well, you guessed, it flies. Every Muckleberry wedding has that moment when the bride swats her face, thinking the groom's sneaking an early kiss. Turns out, she's just shooing a fly. Once, a guest in a yellow tunic was mistaken for a sunflower by a bee and got kissed enthusiastically throughout the ceremony. And, as mentioned, the ultimate taboo? Pigs. Pigs are uninvited guests who bring no gifts and love waddling into the dampest spot, usually right in the middle of the ceremony. One time, just as the bride said, "I do," a black pig leapt onto the hay cart platform, let out a squeal, and bolted straight for the feast table. That ceremony went down in history as the wedding and the Great Pig Riot. Still, the pig was spared, because it brought laughter, a rare treat after 7 weeks of rain. If you're lucky, the wedding happens under pleasant skies. If not, folks rig up a tarp tied to branches, or they just get wet. And don't ask about electricity, the only light comes from the sun, the glowing stares of the bridesmaids, and, at night, the flicker of torches fueled by sheep fat and sheer patience. So, if you ever attend a Muckleberry wedding, don't ask where the seats are, where the red carpet is, or which way to the bathroom. Just steer clear of pigs, avoid ant nests, and smile even if you're perched on a freezing rock. You've officially embraced the classic wedding spirit. Can you smell it? Not Chanel perfume, nor lavender oil wafting through the air. This is Muckleberry Village, a medieval wedding, and the signature scent of this grand occasion is an unmistakable blend. Pigs, sheep, wood smoke, collective sweat, and a bubbling pot of cabbage stew simmering somewhere near a bush. Truth be told, the aroma is an essential part of any Muckleberry wedding. It's not something you decorate with. It's something you endure, then slowly come to love. A lively, honest fragrance that doesn't ask for anyone's permission. As you step into the wedding area, that muddy clearing where everyone's been packed since dawn, you're greeted by warm smoke rising from a giant stew pot. Inside, cabbage simmers with whatever was found this morning, an old onion, some wild garlic, and, if luck allows, an actual piece of mutton. People crowd around the pot like it's the center of the universe. No one knows who's cooking, but everyone acts like the official taster. Nearby, a goat ambles past uninvited, unchallenged. It struts through like an honored guest, pausing to sniff a bridesmaid's braid or nibble a ribbon tied to a fence post. No one minds. Here, if an animal doesn't headbutt you or steal your lunch, it's considered friendly. Dogs dart around, sniffing under wooden tables, scavenging for scraps, a crust of stale bread, a crumb of rock, hard cheese, a thoroughly gnawed chicken bone. One dog even found a shoe whose no one knows and claimed it by lying on it like a treasure. Chickens? Of course, there are chickens. Muckleberry chickens don't shy away from crowds. They weave through wedding gowns, hop onto feast tables, and once true story one laid an egg right in the groom's uncle's coat pocket. They called it a good omen, though the uncle spent ages picking feathers off his sleeve. Wedding decorations? Yes, but lower your expectations. Here, decor means a few wildflowers tied to the fence with thorny twine. If someone really tries, they might add a handful of colorful maple leaves, but that's rare. Once, a girl tied a bundle of onions to the wedding post because they look like flowers and ward off evil. Problem was, the smell warded off the onion. Sensitive maid of honor, too. You won't find lanterns, scented candles, or white-lace tablecloths. Everything is raw, functional. The feast tables are wooden planks propped on empty water barrels. Tablecloths are cleaned rags. Plates? Non-existent. People use their hands or wooden spoons brought from home, and if you forget your spoon, you'll master scooping soup with bread or watch others eat while imagining your own meal. The food isn't a 7-course French buffet. It's soup, always soup with vegetables, grains, and whatever the neighbors didn't save for compost. Sometimes there's meat, if the animal volunteered or wasn't fast enough. The drink is homemade barley beer, slightly sour, reeking of wood, and strong enough to make you forget whether you're at a wedding or a pilgrimage. Kids get apple juice, unless someone grabs the wrong jug, and then the laughter starts earlier than planned. Rough as it is, this feast is a rare holiday for Muckleberry folk. Instead of plowing, trapping weasels, or arguing with goats over well water, today they gather, eat really eaten, laugh out loud without getting stared at. Someone brings a lyre, plucking a few simple notes. Someone recites poetry, or tries to, usually a self-made verse about turnips and unfulfilled love. Kids play tag around the fire, bumping into adults, fake crying to get carried. No twinkling lights, but plenty of bright smiles. No napkins folded into swans, but clumsy hugs, slightly drunken toasts, and shoulder claps hard enough to crack a chicken bone. It all blends into a mix. Hard to name, but familiar. Organized chaos, where the smell of pigs mingles with hay, where bread dropped on the ground gets picked up and eaten, and where happiness doesn't come from luxury but from knowing today you're not farming, not stoking a fire, and can eat soup without sharing it with the cat. And if you laugh because a chicken snatches the bridesmaid's headscarf, no harm done. Here, a wedding doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs heart, some cabbage, and a yard free of pigs. You're standing among the Muckleberry villagers, under the ancient oak. The smell of simmering cabbage stew still lingers. A goat's just been shooed from the bread pile, and now it's time for the main event, the wedding. But before you picture flowers tossed in the air, a teary-eyed bride, a choir soaring stop. Here, the ceremony moves faster than a blacksmith's lunch break. First, the priest steps up not in golden robes, but in a linen tunic stained with dried porridge from breakfast. He clutches a Bible, one corner nibbled by a goat. He climbs onto the platforma, flipped over wooden crate, clears his throat twice, once for attention, once to shoo flies. No orchestra, no bells, no music at all, except the clack of old Marge's cane as she shuffles closer to the soup pot. The priest starts with a few Latin phrases, mumbled just loud enough to make you wonder if he's reciting scripture or yesterday's lunch menu. No one understands, except old Bernard, who studied 3 months in a monastery before ditching it for his wife's baked bread. When the main part arrives, the bride and groom face each other on ground, still soggy from yesterday's rain. The bride shifts her heel, balancing on a slick stone. The groom clasps his hands, staring into space as if rethinking every life choice. Then comes the question, not a romantic, "Will you take this person forever?" but the local version, "Will you share manure duties and turnip planting?" No flowery vows, just a blunt question and a stiff nod. The groom says, "I do," in a voice like he's being coerced into buying old pans at the market. The bride pauses un tense second, and right then, her mother's glare cuts through, fierce, with a soft throat clear and an unspoken reminder. "We already gave them our best hen, remember?" And so the bride says, "I do." No wedding rings. The only precious metal here is a rusty nail scavenged from the forge. No one expects a ring exchange. Most villagers don't even wear shoes, let alone jewelry. An old man on a log whispers, "They forgot the rings." The woman next to him snaps, "No, they remembered. They're just too busy harvesting turnips to forge one." Fair enough. And then, the moment modern folks would call the destined kiss? Nope. In Muckleberry, kissing in public, especially in front of the priest, grandma, and a chicken perched on someone's shoulder, is too much to bear. Kissing's not in the script. Kissing's private, behind the stable, when no one's watching, and definitely after washing your hands. Instead, they just look at each other, share an awkward smile, and bow their heads for the priest's blessing as he flips through the Bible to find the closing lines. He snaps the book shut, raises his hands, and declares what everyone already knew. "You two are now husband and wife." The crowd claps or at least taps lightly, hands busy with soup bowls or swatting chickens. And that's it. No reception, no glowing sunset photo shoot, just a clear, simple shift. 2 people, separate individuals this morning, are now, by afternoon, a lifelong labor team. In Muckleberry, marriage is a contract no notary needed, but everyone remembers. You wed not just for love, but because his field borders hers, because her 2 cows pair well with his old ox, because winter's coming, and teamwork saves firewood. If either hesitates, no problem. The community helps. A glance from the village elder, a gentle reminder from the future mother-in-law that we already slaughtered the chicken. A kid singing the wrong wedding song, making everyone laugh, and easing the tension. It all falls into place, meaning a shared life, maybe not romantic, but definitely full of turnips. And that's that. No parade, no fireworks, just 2 people, some mangled Latin, a few nods, and a community watching. A simple wedding, no makeup, no frills. But in the eyes of those who've lived here forever, it's enough. Because love at least in Muckleberry, doesn't need a stage. Just clean boots and unwavering commitment. And finally, the part everyone's been waiting for since the sun was low behind the hill and the goat hadn't yet raided the bread, the wedding feast. Not the kind with live music, three-tiered desserts, or fine Italian wine. Number in Muckleberry Village, the feast has one golden rule. Fill your belly, luxury can wait. You step into the feast area, rather, a cleared patch of dirt circled by wobbly fences and logs for seats. At the center is the giant Stupota masterpiece of capacity, aroma, and the miracle of not burning through the bottom. Inside swirls a holy mix of cabbage, turnips, barley, some garlic, and, if luck smiles, you might scoop up a single piece of chicken. Just one, and only if the person ahead didn't snag it. Everyone gets a... No, kidding. You get nothing. Bring your own spoon, or learn the art of eating with hands, bread, or a leaf sturdy enough not to tear. Got a wooden spoon? You're famous. Got two? Congratulations, you're royalty. Where do you sit? On anything that doesn't move. A rock, a log, the chicken coop steps, or next to someone who doesn't smell too bad. No assigned seats, no invitations, no color-coded groups. You sit by someone you know or someone you don't, but who's holding a chunk of meat. Sharing is common. Got a spoon? You lend it. Got bread? You break it in half or at least pretend to while hiding the bigger piece. Community bonds form through the clink of spoons in the pot, the hand it over, I'll scoop for you, and the squawk of a chicken kicked in the tail. The bread? Not soft. It's the kind you could build a house with, but after 3 bowls of cabbage soup, even a rock-hard slice feels like gourmet dessert. One guy chewed a piece for 20 minutes and bragged about it like a war story. Beer? Oh, beer flows like a river. Homemade barley brew, stored in a wooden barrel bigger than the groom. Sour, cloudy, but strong enough to make cabbage taste gourmet. 1 mug, and elders tell old tales. Youths dance, the drunk sleep where they sit. One old man sipped his, sat silent, and smiled for 3 hours straight. Nobody knows if he was moved or just numb-lipped. Kids run wild. They don't care for decorum, don't sit still, and never stop moving. 1 falls into the straw. 2 chase each other around the soup pot. A 3rd tries climbing the speech platform just to peek under the groom's tunic. Someone yells, "Get off the bread!" and laughter erupts across the yard. Dogs sprawl out, yawning, but ears perk at the sound of dropped food. They're the feast's best cleanup crew, from breadcrumbs to chicken bones. A dog named Fergus earned the title Knight of Fallen Crumbs for catching 3 pieces in under a minute. The crowd cheered, though no one remembers who threw them. No one talks about winter, taxes, or the goats that broke someone's gate yesterday. Today is for joy, a feast with no splendor, no cushioned chairs, but real laughter. Someone plays a reed flute, another taps a rhythm with a wooden spoon, and after a few sips of beer, someone sings a tune about turnips and lost love. As dusk falls, the flickering firelight glows on faces flushed from drink, heat, and emotioner from wrestling that 3rd bite of bread. An old woman stands, gives a brief speech. "When I was young, I married 2, but my husband never shared his spoon." The crowd roars, the groom hands his spoon to his bride and she keeps it. No need for loud music or fancy dances. A nod, a toast, a shoulder slap with a "hope you grow lots of potatoes," That's enough to know you're in a place where happiness isn't displayed. It's shared, laughed over, and used to forget the day's hardships. In that moment, the whole village, from hobbling elders to dirt-smudged kids, knows nothing binds people like a big pot of soup, a full barrel of beer, and a good excuse to skip work today. And if you're still there, perched on a rock, spoon in hand, belly full, eyes half closed, then congratulations. You've attended a medieval wedding, complete, authentic, and stuffed to the brim. After the brief ceremony, the rowdy feast, and a few minor mishaps involving flying bread and dogs stealing soup, it's time for a part no less vital to any Muckleberry wedding: the gifts. Brace yourself. This isn't the place for glossy wrapped boxes or handwritten cards saying, "Wishing you eternal happiness." No, here, wedding gifts must be useful. The more practical, the more prized. Wondering what to bring? Simple. A handful of beans, a sack of barley, a bundle of dirt, crusted turnips, or, if you really want to impress, a live goose. Gifts aren't judged by looks, but by their ability to help the new couple survive their first winter without eating tree bark or bargaining with bears. Cash? Don't even think about it. Money's as rare as a one-eyed singing dragon. If someone sneaks the couple a few coins, they're hidden so fast you'd swear it's a magic trick. Here, folks believe money sparks disputes. Turnips don't. Take, for example, a distant uncle who brings a broken hoe. Sounds pitiful? Not at all. He says, "The handle's still good, the blade can be sharpened. Broken is a chance to create." The groom bows like he's been handed a wizard's staff. The bride smiles, not from sentiment, but because she knows they've got a tool for digging irrigation ditches or chasing foxes, depending. Another guest brings a lame goat. It limps, squints, and is likely past breeding age. No matter. In Muckleberry, even a picky eater has value. It grazes weeds, gives milk with coaxing, and excels as a theft alarm, bleeding non-stop all night. One of the grandest gifts rarely seen is a jug of homemade beer. If someone arrives with a clay pot of home-brewed ale, sealed with a wooden lid, they're treated like visiting royalty. Instantly, they're offered the cushioned chair, straw-stuffed, but still cushioned, and served the best part of the soup, the chunk, with the most turnips. Then there's the recycled gifter, the circular wedding present. A goose given to Emma and John today might show up at Cousin Mary's wedding next year older, heavier, and grumpier. Word is, one chicken married into 5 families before retiring at the healer's house for losing patience. Sometimes you see gifts of spontaneous symbolism. An old woman hands over a bundle of garlic tied with thorny twine, saying, "To ward off evil," or if there's no evil, to cook with. An uncle brings a smooth stone, explaining, "This holds the door. Wind won't blow your happiness away." The crowd claps. No one asks questions. In Muckleberry, new ideas are welcome, even if no one quite gets them. A young man, fresh from a neighboring village, presents a 3-legged chair. As skeptical eyes turn to him, he stands tall. Marriage is like this chair, unbalanced, unsteady, but sit right, and it holds. The village pauses, eating for 3 seconds. Then someone says, "As long as it doesn't break mid-soup," and the meal resumes. Every gift, big or small, new or used, carries a practical truth. This couple isn't just marrying for love, though that's sometimes debatable. They're teaming up for life. And life, in a place where winter can last 5 months and dry firewood scarce, makes anything you can hold, cook, or chew precious. You won't see formal gift opening. No one tracks a list for thank you notes. No registry or fancy card boxes. Gifts are plopped on the ground, next to where the chickens rest, and someone's tasked with sorting them into 3 piles. Usable now, needs fixing, and needs checking to see if it's a gift or just forgotten junk. And so, amid the laughter, chewing, sneezes from a straw-allergic elder, and an ill-timed rooster crow, the new couple eyes their chaotic gift pile. They smile not for romance, but because they know marriage in Muckleberry doesn't start with roses, but with a sack of turnips and a slightly stubborn goose. Best of luck to them, and tie that goat to the post tight. It has a habit of visiting neighbors the first chance it gets. You thought the wedding feast was just eating and toasting? Oh no. In Muckleberry, it's also a stage for the whole village to perform. And you're not just a guest. You're an unwilling audience to an open-air theater starring actors who never rehearsed but play their parts like they've waited all year for their one line. See old Edna over there? Front row, clutching a cup of herbal tea gone cold since sunrise. Her squinting eyes sparkle like she's just recalled a scandal from last year's wedding. She didn't just arrive earliest. She came with a mission, to update and commentate. It starts innocently. Nice weather today, isn't it? Not like Emma's wedding, when the wind blew the bride's skirt clear to the pigsty, and then a flood of tales from the Stone Age gets analyzed, compared, and rated on Edna's personal scale. Sit too close, and you're treated to a string of secrets she swears she's never told, though she's already shared them with 6 people this morning. Before you can escape, there's a rustle from behind. Enter Morlapart Time Charm Weaver, self-proclaimed, keeper of cosmic balance within a 3-mile radius. She's draped in a moldy gray cloak, a bundle of hay slung over her shoulder, and a clinking sack that sounds like it holds the universe's mysteries. Morla's not here to eat. She's here to safeguard eternal bliss with cosmic energy. In other words, she scatters dried flowers around the couple, scratches odd symbols in the dirt, and mutters something that's half incantation, half tavern order. You turn to dodge a dab of fragrant powder on your forehead, and right then Uncle Gregory appears. No one knows where he came from. He might have been napping behind the beer barrel since dawn, nose red as a pickled tomato, clutching a chipped wooden bowl. He sways and suddenly bellows, "Marriage is a battlefield, and retreat dishonors your name." You flinch. Everyone else is used to it. Every wedding has a version of this speech, swapping battlefield for trap or maze with no exit. After his brief, fiery oration, Gregory stumbles forward and hands the bowl to the bride. "For you kids, use it for water or ashes, your choice." No one's sure if it's a blessing or a prophecy, but the bride smiles and nods. Look around, and it hits you. You're in a living comedy where everyone's got their own script and no shame in performing. There's Jemima, wearing 2 floral dresses because she couldn't pick purple or green. There's Barley, toting his reed flute. You've never heard him play a decent note. There's young Hugo, vowing to document the entire wedding, with a charcoal stub on the back of a biscuit box lid. Gossip spreads like wildfire. The person to your left whispers, "See that? The second bridesmaid was late, hair still dripping." The one to your right sighs, "That tunic, isn't it the groom's sister's ex? Husband's?" Every word's a spark, every glance an exclamation point. And you, despite trying not to eavesdrop, now know the marital, financial, and health status of at least 3 village families. You even catch the eye of an old man in the front row silent all day. His look seems to say, "This is my 9th time at this ritual. Still as fun as the first, and the bread still just as hard." It dawns on you. A Muckleberry wedding isn't just a union of two people. It's the year's grandest reunion of old stories, familiar glares, and half-true, half-made-up jests. No one's acting, yet everyone's playing a role. And you? You're part of it, even if you only came for the soup and planned to slip out before anyone suggested dancing. But looking back amid the laughter, the clink of bowls and spoons, the seemingly pointless chatter that carries memories, you get it. This is what makes the wedding alive. Not the bride's dress, not a ring, but this colorful, quirky, indispensable crowd. Each person with a quip, a gesture, a detail, all weaving a grueling day into a memory that makes you smile for years. And who knows? One day, you might be the one staggering into the yard, chipped bowl in hand, nose glowing red, shouting, "Marriage is a battlefield," just to become the next great side character in a folktale no one writes, but everyone remembers. You thought a Muckleberry wedding was all about love, bonding, or at least adults who know when to raise a glass. Then you haven't noticed the kids. They don't sit still. They don't listen. They don't care about ceremonies, speeches, or blessings. They sweep in like a tiny, chaotic whirlwind, small but packing enough energy to topple a beer barrel. Look around you, see them everywhere. Under tables, on hay carts, in bushes, and sometimes inside the soup pot. One's chasing a chicken, another's chasing its own shadow. No one's really watching them. The adults are busy clinking mugs, laughing loud, or pretending not to notice the mother-in-law's glorious survival skill in any culture. There's a scruffy-haired boy wielding a turnip like it's a knight's sword, yelling, "I'm king of the stew pot," before climbing a haystack and crashing down with a thud, as if the heavens just grounded him. The other kids roar with laughter. No one helps. By Muckleberry's unwritten kid code, if you're brave enough to leap from a barrel to a wagon, you're tough enough to stand up alone. Then, there's a 6-year-old girl dress crumpled, face smeared with someone's spilled ink staging a wedding for 2 corncob dolls. You watch her ceremony and realize it's got more structure than the real one from this morning. Another boy, no one's sure whose, crafts a crown from bread crusts and declares himself Barley King. When someone asks where his throne is, he plops onto a bucket of vegetable peels, raises a hand, and roars, "Only I can ration the potatoes." No one argues, probably because no one wants a job tied to peeling turnips. You try crossing the yard without stepping on a kid, but it's near impossible. These children don't walk. They charge, roll, slither, leap. One tumbles after slipping on an onion peel. But before tears fall, another saves him with a half-chewed bread chunk. Seconds later, they're back to playing like the fall never happened. Bruises? Just badges of honor in Muckleberry's kid world. A mother sits far off, beer in hand, back to the chaos, and tells you, "No blood-curdling screams, no blood, they're fine." You nod. A parenting philosophy short, effective, and practical for a village raising kids like nomadic warriors. Once, you see a kid nearly fall into the stew pot. Luckily, it wasn't cooking yet. Luckier still, a dog yanked his shirt back, a heroic act, earning it a whole dry bread hunk. The boy grins wide. The old bridesmaid gasps, "Lord, he nearly became the main course." No place is entirely safe. Under the feast table, 2 kids build a cold-cut fortress. Behind the hay cart, a gang plays goose heist. No real goose, but no less wild. Even in the empty chicken coop, a small crew holds a contest for the best cluck. The winner, honestly, is impressive. No one demands order. Adults know the kids are the feast's lasting laughter. Whether they're screaming, dropping bread, or mistaking beer for apple juice, they're forgiven faster than anyone else. Without them, the party would just be recycled tales of last winter and how Gregory once slept in a horse trough. You spot a boy passed out mid-yard, face crusted with breadcrumbs, clutching a turnip like a teddy bear. Around him, others still run, shout, explore every branch and haystack. And you get it. If a kid leaves a Muckleberry wedding without a bruise, a smudge, and a wild story to tell, it wasn't a truly joyful day. You smile, tiptoe through the living chaos, and think, in Muckleberry, every wedding has cabbage soup, home-brewed beer, a nervous groom, and a squad of kids ready to turn the day into legend. And if you hear a yell, "Stop him! He's swinging that turnip like an axe," don't worry. That's just the special act for guests who can't sit still. You think after the feasting, laughter, and turnip chasing, things would wind down? Not a chance. In Muckleberry, no wedding feast is complete without music, though calling it music is generous. At first, you're not sure what you're hearing. A flute? A kettle whistling in the wind? But glance to your right, and there's a shaggy-haired guy in a tattered cloak, blowing a bamboo flute nearly as long as his shin. He plays with his whole soul, cheeks puffed like fresh-baked buns. The result? A string of notes like a cold-stricken owl. No one corrects him. Here, passion trumps skill. Behind him, you hear a droomer, rather. An iron pot, thwacked with a wooden ladle. That's old Willard, who's tried every instrument but found his true talent, pot-banging. He whacks with fiery zeal, each beat threatening to rouse ancestors from the nearby graveyard. Before you recover, from the yard's corner, a familiar and slightly alarming group of drunken uncles forms a wobbly semicircle, arms around each other like they're about to sing a classic hymn. But no, they launch into a bellowing song, where you catch words like winter, love, and lost sheep. The melody soars, dips, then veers sideways like it's been shoved by the wind. Lyrics are vague. Some rhyme, some don't. The ending usually crashes into tragedy. Lost my love, lost my flock, then slipped into a ditch. No one complains. Instead, people clap, laugh, and some even join in, though no one's sure which verse they're on. The oldest bridesmaid waves her handkerchief, like she's at an opera. A boy tries harmonizing by shrieking an octave higher, only to be drowned out by a chicken's indignant squawk. Music in Muckleberry doesn't demand technique. No instrument? Stomp your feet, clap your hands, pat your belly if it hits the beat. Someone bangs a pot on their head like a tambourine. Another clinks an empty beer bottle against an onion bucket. An old woman uses a broom to tap rhythm and chase rat snow, one's sure which is the performance. You spot an elderly man with spindly legs, dancing like the village spirits possessed him. Each step blends an Irish jig with a slip on an onion peel. Every time you think he'll fall, he spins, throws his hands skyward, and shouts, "This is the art of survival." And you're invited to join. Someone grabs your hand, pulls you into the yard where people spin, step back, step forward, collide, apologize, and keep dancing. You don't know what dance this is, but you laugh, and that's enough to count as in. No sheet music, no conductor, no speakers blaring sound. But there are real heartbeats, the cheers of joyful drunks, and a moment when you catch the glow on someone's face, maybe the groom, maybe the spoon, drumming grandman. You realize, this is music that needs no filter. An old man whispers, "Back in my youth, I belted that song too before a cow chased me." He joins in again, forgetting the words, eyes closed like he's reliving a carefree day. Under the flickering firelight, the off-key flute, lopsided drum, and wayward lyrics blend into an unbelievable mess yet somehow. It's warm, magical. This isn't music for performance. It's music to feel alive, to know you're here, part of this quirky, honest wedding. In a world where most sounds are church bells, woodpecker taps, or off-tune roosters, this chaos is a sonic miracle. No earbuds needed, no playlist required. Here, all it takes is a bit of beer, a chunk of bread, a dancing turnip, and a few folks unafraid of missing the beat to craft a one-of-a-kind wedding symphony. So, next time someone says, music needs proper rhythm, pitch, technique, you can smile and reply, not in Mucklebury. Here, it just needs the right people and the right joy. You imagine medieval wedding dances like those in period film, swirling gowns, ancient instruments echoing through valleys. Oh, how sweet. But no, the reality is different. It's more like a gentle collision of farmers, beer barrels, and collective confusion. When the feast hits its stride, the beer soaks into bones, and bellies swell with turnips and cabbage soup. Someone, usually a pot-bellied man with a curly beard that's never met a calm, leaps up and roars, "Time to dance." No lilting soundtrack, no mic check, just a cheer and response, and everyone drags each other to the muddy patch by the goat pen, now a makeshift dance floor. Music? Oh, you're adorable for asking. Here, music starts with a screeching flute, played by a gap-toothed teen with no sense of rhythm, piping through a reed. Then comes the Beata wooden barrel, thumped by the blacksmith, who clearly sees rhythm as a loose suggestion. If you're lucky, someone belts out a folk tune about losing cows, chickens, and sometimes virginity, all in one fateful spring night. The villagers don't dance with choreography, they dance with feeling. Stomp the ground not to the beat, but to gravity. Swing arms like shooing birds. Spin as if dodging an imaginary bee. Everyone's got their own style, and no one really knows what they're doing, which makes it perfectly chaotic. The bride and groom, still flushed from their brief vows, are yanked into the circlino consent required. Someone slaps the groom's back. "Your turn, lad." Another nudges the bride into a spin, more like twirling a dry broom. They attempt their first step. She trips on her skirt. She stomps his foot. They both tumble into a pile of old straw. The crowd claps wildly, not for the dance, but for the fall. In village tongue, a tumble declares, "The party's officially on." You see a kid spinning, wobbling faster until he rolls like a wooden wheel without an axle. Adults cheer, tossing roasted turnip bites into their mouths as a reward. An old man, maybe once a brave warrior, maybe just a beer enthusiast, sits on a log, clapping to a rhythm only he hears. Each time someone falls, he yells, "Another marriage blessed." No one argues. He's the only one who remembers every couple in the village and their affairs. Shoes, if anyone's wearing them, get kicked off by the second dance, not from excitement, but because mud's claimed the soles. Some dance barefoot, dodging obvious signs animals were here first. A woman, nicknamed Rain Cloud for summoning showers with her laugh, slips and crashes into a dog, taking down 3 kids and an old man. It's no longer a dance, it's human dominoes. In the crowd, one person flails their arms like a swan, while their neighbor dances as if shaking a beehive off their head. They bump, apologize, bump again, then burst out laughing. That's the beauty. No one's trying to outshine anyone. No TikTok clips, no filters, just heartbeats, breaths, chuckles, and a few slips in the muddy sunset glow. Not dancing? No problem. Someone will drag you in, a granny, an old man, or a grease-smeared kid. They'll say, "Weddings aren't for watching, they're for falling together," a life lesson more modern than we think. As night falls, the flute runs out of breath, the barrel's got nothing left to thump, the dogs snoring mid-yard. Yet the final dance goes on, stumbling steps homeward, through mud, under stars, with the scent of turnips, snores, and a feeling that this wedding was actually pretty fun. You raise your mugor, rather, a clay jug the size of a child's head, and look around. No one really knows what this beer's made of. Barley? Maybe. Wild herbs? Could be. It's potent enough to cure backaches and stale marriages. They don't call it beer here. It's holy water, because after 3 sips, everything feels miraculous. At a medieval Muckleberry wedding, beer isn't a side dish. It's the soul, the spine, the reason half the guests show up without knowing the bride's name. There are 2 kinds. Light brew for kids, yes. Kids because clean water's rarer than pearls. And the second kind, a gut punch for adults, especially those who've survived a winter without losing a finger. You share the mug with the person next to you. Germs? They don't know what those are. The beer's so strong it could disinfect your soul. The taste? Hard to pin down. A bit sour, a bit bitter, a hint of something's off, but too late to stop now. The more you drink, the hazier things get, literally and figuratively. An old man starts recounting his wedding, a story everyone's heard. But this time he swears a dragon was involved. No one objects. Object, and he'll start over. The flute player goes off key, but no one cares. Someone stands to dance, trips over a table leg, and tumbles into straw. An old woman claps, praising the graceful move. The more they drink, the more everyone's convinced they're the village's best dancer, and the muddy ground becomes a clay-soaked Broadway. You spot a man dozing by the cabbage stew pot, head nearly dipping into the lid. No one pulls him back. He might be dreaming sweetly or just keeping warm. A kid crawls by, spoon twice the size of their face, giggling after stealing a bread chunk. No one scolds. It's a feast. And the wedding rule? If you're fast enough to grab it, you deserve it. An elderly couple bickers lightly over who sang lead last year. They can't recall the name, just a voice like a cold-stricken hen. They settle on everyone being equally awful, clink mugs, and drink to forget the debate. As the beer flows, truth starts. Shape-shifting. One claims they saw King Arthur. Another says they chatted with a forest sprite. You're not sure if they're joking. No one wants to fact-check. At this point, every word's gospel. For a moment, you look up, expecting stars. There are none not because of clouds, but because you're staring into your own coat pocket. No matter. Beer's not just a drink. It's a ticket to another dimension, where every mistake's forgiven with a laugh and a full mug. The bride, by now, has ditched her flower crown after a bee chase. The groom's explaining to someone that this year's beer is less sweet than last year's, though last year he was single and in another village. A stray goat wanders into the feast, gets roped into the dance by the band. It protests by leaving a pile mid-floor. The crowd claps like it's a rehearsed act. You take your last sip, and your tongue can't tell cabbage from barley anymore. The man beside you may be the blacksmith, maybe a stranger from the next village, tells you he'll propose after this wedding with a horseshoe. Where there's beer, there's hope. And so, the night creeps in, or someone just knocked over the main oil lamp. Darkness swallows the laughter, singing and snoring from the grass. You sit, clutching an empty mug, pondering one thing. Maybe, just maybe, Beer was humanity's greatest invention back then, not for its taste, but because it makes everyone a bit more lovable, or at least easier to tolerate when sharing a seat with a chicken. You think a medieval wedding wraps up with sweet melodies, soft moonlight, and gentle smiles? Oh dear, you're in for the best part. Chaos, the essential spice that turns a bland ceremony into an immortal legend, retold until next season's harvest or the last cow trudges home. It starts innocently. A farmer may be the groom's distant cousin, maybe just a passerby lured by beer kicks over a barrel. Not the light stuff, but the special brew, aged 3.5 months in the monk's straw cellar. Someone yells, someone else blames a chicken. A perfectly rational, utterly pointless argument erupts. Meanwhile, a pig uninvited, but when do pigs wait for RSVPs? Sneaks through the crowd, charging the feast table. It barrels through like a trained athlete, trampling the village's biggest bread loaf. No one catches it. Someone chases, only to slip in the spilled beer. The result? A pile of people sprawled out, a pig polishing off the bread, and an old woman laughing so hard her last tooth pops out. The kids? Oh, they're on their own adventure. One boy slides into a water barrel, dragging 2 others with him. Now they're sitting in it, like they're racing rowboats. A girl tries riding a dog. Another kid name unknown snatches the bride's veil, wears it, and sprints around shouting, "I'm the bread princess." No one stops them. If the kids are happy, the wedding's still got hope. The climax? A goat origin unclear, possibly a gift from a prior wedding dashes through the crowd, snags the bride's veil in its teeth, and bolts. The bride, who's endured plenty already, just stands there, sighing, as if she foresaw this while washing her face this morning. The whole village laughs. And when I say whole village, that includes the priest, choking on half a prayer. A fight? Of course. A shoulder bump, a sideways glance, and 2 lads, probably both sweet on the bride, once a go at it like angry sacks of potatoes. It's brief. 3 punches, 1 tumble into straw, and they're hugging, splitting a fresh beer, vowing to only brawl at the harvest festival. An old Mano Clear title, just called Know It All, recounts last year's wedding, when someone fell from a tree mid-dance. No one helped, thinking it was part of the show. The guy lay there an hour, woke up, and got dubbed best dancer in the village. His advice? Fall gracefully. You might score a front row seat. Look around. The chaos doesn't bother anyone. It's expected like winter rain or midnight roosters. Chaos is fate. The spilled barrel, the trampled bread, the kid swinging a turnip at a dogget, all blends into a wondrous tapestry of village life. The bride now has her veil backfished from a bush, adorned with grass and goat hair. The groom's tying his shoe with straw. Someone restarts the flute, sounding like a wind-whipped chimney, and the laughter rises again, as if nothing happened. Because here, chaos doesn't ruin a wedding. It completes it. You settle on a log, raise your beer half spilled on your hand and think, this isn't a fairy tale wedding. This is real. Full of mud, sweat, shouts, laughs, and pig stench. But also full of humanity, song, and moments you know will become jokes retold when the harvest ends. If you're lucky, someday you'll hear a white-haired elder recount this wedding where a goat stole a veil, a pig wrecked the bread, and a groom face-planted after slipping on a turnip. And you'll smile, because you were there, in the most unforgettable chaos of the century. Amid the uproar still buzzing from the clash of beer, turnips, and a wayward goat, you notice the bride and groom have vanished. At first you think they're just stepping away to fix the veil yanked from a goat's jaws or to retrieve shoes flung off during the traditional spin until you fall dance. But no, 5 minutes pass, then 10, no sign of them, and oddly, no one's panicked. Instead, a knowing grin spreads across the faces of those who've survived at least 3 weddings or 3 nights near the chicken coop. A farmer nods, voice warm with wisdom. Oh, they're off, signing the contract. A plump auntie, chewing stone hard bread, chimes in. Gotta move fast, or it'll cool off. The crowd stirs with winking eyes, nodding heads, and giggles like mice feasting in a granary. No one needs to ask. Everyone knows the unwritten ritual is underway. You glance around, curious, and soon spot it. The old barn corner behind the church, shielded by a curtain of hay and crooked planks, the unofficial wedding chamber. It's a tradition no one teaches, but all know by heart. A newlywed couple must seal their lifelong labor contract in the ancient, very physical way. Think you'd blush? Maybe. But here, if your cheeks redden, you're too young for the strong beer. The villagers don't see this disappearance as sneaky. It's a wordless proclamation. We're ready for the battle called marriage, starting with sweat, straw, and no proper bed. When they return 20 minutes later, maybe more, depending on how long it took to pick straw from hair or for the groom to realize he grabbed someone else's shirt, the village stays silent. No shouts of congratulations, no flute flourishes, just a slow, symbolic round of applause, as if cheering. They're coming of age. The bride smiles softly, cheeks flushed, hair sporting new leaves, eyes sparkling from tears or laughter no one pries. The groom's a bit unsteady, maybe from beer, maybe from mastering double knot buttons. They stand together, hand in hand, as if no pig ever trampled their wedding bread. An auntie pats the bride's shoulder with a blessing. Put garlic under your pillow tonight. Keep sleepwalking away. An uncle hands the groom a torn cloth, calling it a family heirloom, really just an old trouser scrap for wiping dishes. Everyone nods solemnly. It's tradition. Someone whistles. Someone winks. An old woman shuffles forward, slips the bride a small cloth bag and whispers, "Dried flowers and seeds. Mix, bury near the bed. For luck." No one asks why it smells like turnips. It's part of the mystique. Even the kids, those chaos gremlins chasing a bald chicken moments ago, go quiet when the couple returns. They stare like witnessing magic. A little girl runs up, hands the bride a blade of grass, calling it a new bouquet. The bride laughs, tears falling, because that's all a bride truly needs, a weed and a village that waits. You realize, no need for a dazzling gown, a glittering venue, or even a ring. Just a hay barn, a nod from both parents, and the silent blessing of the village. Marriage is sealed with a handclasp behind the straw, not a flowery document. And then, the music kicks up again, crooked flute, pot drum, and laughter from nowhere. The feast rolls on. The bride and groom blend back into the crowd, as if they never left. But everyone knows, after that moment, they're no longer two individuals. They're a team, an alliance, a duo against winter, stray pigs, and moldy turnips. You finish your beer, smile. Now you get it. A wedding isn't the ceremony. It's the moment chaos turns to memory. When two people become one through straw, cryptic blessings, and wordless applause. You wake as dawn's first light creeps through the cracks of the chicken coop. No alarm bells, just a weary rooster crowing late, like it's nursing a hangover too, and the first thing you notice is the smell. an indescribable blend: damp straw, bruised turnips, and something very human. You sit up, or rather, spring out of a hay pile, less a bed, more a first place you collapsed. Before you lies a battlefield's aftermath, a man still cradling an iron pot like it's his golden dream, muttering, "Where's the bread?" A woman sleeps with her head on a goat's back, both looking serene, as if they reached enlightenment after downing 3 mugs of heavy beer. Alone shoes, just own dangles from a tree branch, swaying like a monument to a glorious night. No one knows its owner, but the legend will endure. The girl with one shoe danced till dawn. Your eyes scan the scene. An old man dozing on a woodpile, a daisy crown on his head, clutching a wooden spoon, part weapon, part utensil. In the distance, a veil snags on a thatched roof, as if wind and revelers conspired to create an avant-garde art installation. The day's first laugh erupts from the kids, the only creatures in the village who seem immune to sleep. They run, sing a makeshift "What's Marriage?" tune with poetic lyrics and an empty pan for percussion. One holds a duck egg aloft like a trophy, shouting, "It's still warm." Someone mutters, "Hope it's not from Grandpa's bowl last night." The bride and groom emerge, as if stepping from a dream, mixed with wedding vows and a muddy nightmare. The bride's hair is a crow's nest, her dress patched with 3 herbs and some flower weather from bread or the kids' pranks. No one knows. The groom looks like he crawled out of a sack wrestling contest tunic askew, leaves on his hands, eyes dreamy with hope. But they smile, that "we survived" grin enough for a lasting marriage's start. The villagers stir slowly. No rush. Cleaning up after a wedding isn't urgent in medieval times. They crawl from bushes, eaves, or under hay carts wherever they dropped last night, unbothered by who's next to them, as long as they don't snore. Sighs ripple like waves. An old woman stands, back cracking, whispering, "Next time, ease up on the beer, dear." Others pick up bread scraps, wipe them clean, and pocket them. Recycling is peak survival art. Someone finds a lost spoon. Another realizes they're wearing the wrong shirt. An uncle chuckles, recounting his feat of 6 beers while still recalling his wife's Namino small victory. They start gathering planks, scrubbing pots, shooing chickens off platters to clear space for cleanup. The morning air feels strange, tired, yet warm. Everyone's reminiscing, despite throbbing heads and protesting stomachs. The feast is over, but its echo lingers, in laughter, straw scent, that lone shoe in the tree. A kid asks, "Is it done?" An auntie replies, no hesitation, "Done? 5 more weddings this month, child." You laugh, because you get it. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a gathering, a social ritual, a damn good excuse to drop the plow, forget winter, and live fully only for one night. And so the wedding ends not with fireworks or a carriage, but with gentle groans, the swish of sweeping leaves, and a promise, "Next time we drink less." A promise, of course, never kept. You stand there, in the morning mist, as the first rays of sun graze the thatched roofs, and you realize something's different. Not the lingering beer fumes in the air, not the rock-hard bread that just fell on your head from somewhere. It's the quiet, a fleeting moment where everyone, even the pig that just toppled a water basin, pauses, and you feel something like gratitude. Before you, the bride and groom stand amid the straw, hair tangled, eyes shadowed, hands clasped tight. Not for romance, mind you, but maybe to keep each other from collapsing after a night of rolling every which way. Yet in their eyes not exhaustion, but light. Not from the sun, but that fragile, fierce glow of hope. You turn, see faces smudged with dirt, bare feet, clothes where mud and fabric blur together. But everyone's smiling. A real smile, and not the beer-fueled kind, but the kind that says they've weathered something together. Not war, not plague, but a long day, a longer night, and all the little bits of life we call ordinary. This wedding messy, lacking diamond rings or lavish gauchas, what every era craves. Joy. A simple, rough joy, like a chipped wooden mug still brimming with beer. You realize, amid freezing winters, endless plowing, tax burdens, and fear of disease, stealing a neighbor a night like this is a marvel. Joy isn't a luxury in this village, it's a rare gift. But when it comes, it's loud, chaotic, and true. No need for colored lights or a DJ. Just a drum made from a pot, a few off-key voices, and a crowd ready to laugh in the face of hardship. You recall the drunk uncle butchering a folk song, still earning applause. The kid waving a turnip around the feast table like a scepter. The grandma shouting, "He's kissing the bride," as if she'd won a lottery, all pointing to one truth. This is when they get to be human, not farmers, not slaves to weather, but people who can revel, love, laugh, even just a little. You understand why this wedding is retold yearly, like a legend, not for the stew still bloating you into tomorrow, not for the dancing camera-worthy memes if filmed, but for the raw, improvised heart of it, connection. You see it in the man helping a child pick up a bread scrap, in the mother's tired, loving call to her kid, in how they sit together, sharing the last crumb as if it's gold-dusted wedding cake. A wedding isn't just a ritual, it's an excuse to live loud, vibrant, foolish. A moment to set burdens aside, to dance barefoot with a weightless heart. It's how a small village tells poverty, hunger, disease, "We're still here, and we're laughing." You glance at the bride, clutching a straw-stuffed pillow, one clear if it's for comfort, or to chuck at her new husband for farting in front of the village, and you smile, because even that's part of the joy. Imperfect, unedited, but real. Maybe, when night falls again, and you lie on a creaky bed with snores in your ears and mud on your feet, you'll remember this wedding. Not for the beer, but for what you felt amid the chaos. Life isn't always beautiful, but it's always worth living, especially when you've got someone to share a mug, a dance, and a muddy laugh with. In a world where everything feels too fast, too much, too complex, a medieval wedding night reminds you, sometimes joy is just existing messy, loud, and utterly human. You sit there, chin in hand, staring at the dried mud caked on your trousers, and think, so this is the legacy. Not shiny things like wedding rings or pearl-studded lace gowns, but a colorful, chaotic mess that makes you laugh every time it crosses your mind. And of course, there's always mud. A village wedding without mud is like bread without salt. Edible, sure, but no fun. No one in the village owns a camera. No one thinks to capture the moment. For some upload, partly because there's no internet, partly because everyone's hands are busy hauling stew pots or propping up a drunk uncle before he tumbles into the pigsty. But you know what? What isn't caught in pictures lives on in stories. This wedding will be retold through the long winter, not because it was perfect, but because it was clumsily, teeth-itchingly real. You'll remember the toothless grandma, mid-chaos, still trying to recount her own wedding from decades ago, starting with her classic line, "Back then, the mud was even thicker." You'll recall the kid sprinting around with a pan on his head yelling, "I'm the wedding king," before slipping and diving headfirst into a hay pile like a corn liquor night. Those images, blurry compared to digital photos, will flash in your mind whenever a rooster crows at dawn or you catch a whiff of fermenting beer. and you'll retell it to some grandkid who asks, "Grandpa, did they have 3-tier cakes in your day?" And you'll chuckle, describing the only wedding cake, a bread loaf harder than stone, doubled as a weapon during the dance. They'll listen, eyes wide, amazed, and laughing. That's the legacy. The wedding story isn't just about two people. It's about the whole village. Everyone has a role, from the cook to the wild dancer to the guy who fell into the soup. Each adds something, even if it's just a spectacular tumble or a loud snore mid-love song. No one's left out. In that moment, they're all part of a tale bigger than themselves. And strangely, that chaos seemingly pointless binds people tighter than any sermon. You think of today's world, everything neatly planned, schedules printed, weddings in air-conditioned halls where laughs must be polite to fit the frame. Then you recall the medieval bride, her veil snatched by a goat, the crowd cheering like it was a championship win. You pity those who've never seen such small, silly Thingstony moments that make stories last forever. And you get it. This is what they call village spirit. Not because everyone's saintly, some still swipe turnips from neighbors' fields, but because when the time comes, they show up, they dance, they pull each other out of the pig trough after too much beer. No grand reason, no perfect etiquette, just a reason to be together. And a wedding, despite the mud and stale beer stink, is a damn fine reason. You look out at the fields. The sun's up, a chicken clucks somewhere in the distance, and in that moment, you smile. Because in a world that feels so chaotic, there are memories not polished, not flawless, but brimming with laughter and humanity that stay. This wasn't just a wedding. It's proof. Even in a time of scarcity, people knew how to make joy with a steaming stew pot, a dance without music, and a belly laugh ringing through the mud. You sigh, relieved. Tomorrow, you'll still wake early, grab your hoe, and fret over the leaky straw roof. But last night you lived fully. And that legacy isn't in history books. It's in your heart, in the stories you'll tell, in the laughter still clinging to the mud. See, a medieval wedding isn't just a party. It's a portrait of life, muddy, bitter, beard, but bursting with joy. If you loved this tale, hit that subscribe button and share it with a history-loving friend. Now, close your eyes, let the fans hum lull you, and dream of a village where pigs are VIPs. Sleep tight. See you on the next time travel adventure.